Hi, guys, and thanks for joining us. So, today we have the second of our lunchtime chats in the context of COP26. So, COPán Tae II. So, today we're talking about future design and what could a circular economy look like for both film and TV and theatre. So, thank you very much for joining us. Today we have Eimer Murphy, Jeda and Áine O'Hara. So what we might do just as we're kicking off is get you all to introduce yourself and just a little bit of background about what you do, where you work, and yeah.
Starting.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'm Eimer. I'm the prop master of the Abbey Theatre. I've been working in theatre for 20 something years now at this point, 25, I think.
Brilliant. Thanks for joining us. And Jeda, I'll move over to you.
Yeah, my name is Jeda. I'm a director and a writer of both theatre and film. So I work in both industries, and I've been working in both for about 10 years. Yeah, that's what I do.
Amazing. Thanks for joining us.
So I'm an artist and designer. I mostly work in theatre, but have done a bit of film work as well. I mainly do set and costume, and then on sort of film and TV, I've done like set dressing and working in the prop department and stuff like that. And yeah, I've also been working in this industry for about 10 years.
Amazing. A wealth of experience among us. So Áine, I might stay with you then. You work in design. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, how we can start moving forward in making it more sustainable?
Yeah, I was like making a joke before we started about like how it is all about having access to more money. I suppose I was thinking about like things that mean that I have to throw stuff away, or that I have to make like quick decisions. And all the stuff that leads to that is like really, really short timelines, teams that aren't big enough, and I suppose like just tiny budgets, which is kind of like the scale of shows that I would be working on are like kind of fringe shows or smaller, and oftentimes the crew or cast are not getting paid enough. So budgets, like design budgets, are really, really tiny, and if you want it to look good in any way, you have to make like sort of harsh decisions about where you shop. So I suppose it's about like having that in mind, whether that's like I know from applying to Arts Council funding that there's a sort of separate budget for access. If there could be like a separate budget for kind of making your show more green, that would also be really, really helpful. That there's like an extra pot that you're applying for, along with the sort of general show budget, so that you can work in a more sustainable way, I suppose. And then also, I think that like a lot of the problems in Ireland that are happening right now kind of really impact sort of how much stuff we have to throw away. So like after a show, I usually have to dump stuff or try to give it to friends, and because I live in a tiny room and none of my housemates want to have like a set in the living room. So like it's about having a space that we can donate this stuff, a place that we could store it. If we could all come together in some way to have like somewhere that we can give materials and costumes at the end of a show, it would be really helpful, and then they could be reused, because there's so much stuff that I know that I've thrown away that like would be perfect for someone else's show, but they go out and then have to do the same thing, and it just goes on and on and on, because we just don't have the space to kind of store that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it really, because Eimer and I were talking about just before we started, one of the real issues that we have, particularly in Ireland, is where we store sets and costume, and you have to go through, as you say, only that heartbreaking decision of what stays and what goes, and what can live in your living room and can't.
Yeah.
So Eimer, you had a lot to say about the storing of that. Do you want to?
Well, I'm laughing because when I started in theatre, Fado and Aaron, every one of us, I think, that starts in theatre, having done like 2 or 3 different shows, goes, there should be a space that we can put the things and get the things, and everyone could use them. And everyone,
there really should be.
And everyone thinks of the first person to think of it, and just everyone has been saying it for as long as I've been in theatre. But in lots of ways, there kind of is in in more holistic ways, because I'm thinking about this is feeds into some pieces that I've written before about St. Patrick's Parade and things. The trickle down economics of those who get funding and big funding, and how it makes its way, percolates down through the industry. And it does, or it did before we became so bogged down in the cost of transport and the cost of storage and things, because I well remember things like Monica Frawley getting government money to design the opening ceremony of the Special Olympics, say, for instance, and spending money on proper colored silk pennants that went all the way around the stadium. And those things were used in every single show all over the country. I remember going down to Houston to meet the train from Galway because someone had them in Galway on a show and I needed to borrow them for something else. That used to go on all the time. So it wasn't necessarily, it's almost like a cloud-based storage, if you think about it that way. It was, people had things squirreled away all over the place. And if you knew who to call, they'd say, so-and-so had that the last time I saw it. And things did continually circle around. So it literally was a circular economics before it became a buzzword. But in the last while, I mean, particularly in the last 10 years, but always really, the cost of storage and the fact that everyone's having to move further out of town. I remember when I started in theatre, Barabbas had a space down in Harry Crosby's, down which is now the IFSC. And everybody used to go down there, and you'd be down there at night, and it was nothing. It was in Victorian warehouses, and there'd be loads of theatre companies used to use that space. And so then, obviously, the gentrification and the cost of the rising cost of property developers moving in and spaces disappearing and becoming apartments, and then the storage goes out further, and then it goes out further and out further. Like I remember thinking, God, the Abbey storage is way out in Finglas. That's so far away. How do they manage? And now everyone's gone out to Kilcock and out further, even further and further, where it's cheaper. And that just adds transport costs, it adds petrol, it adds, that there's more carbon emissions involved. There's more, there's so much more involved in when the spaces just aren't there. So I do think that kind of cloud idea of people in the know where the things are.
Yeah.
Still does exist, but it is harder because at the end of the day, as Áine was saying before we started, the decisions have to be made. You need to clear stuff, you need to get stuff out, and often the answer is it's a skip, and it's heartbreaking every time. It's just awful. So yeah.
Yeah, and to see all the work that you put in to be, maybe because as you were saying, Eimer, it's too specific for a show.
Yeah. So we were talking about that before. Should I talk a bit about that?
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, if you want to talk about I guess the green community in the Abbey and how that started and how it's going. So
the Abbey building, and this is building wide, there's a green committee in the Abbey now, and it's a couple of years on the go now. It became a lot of theoretical over lockdown because everyone was at home in their own houses, and people had time to think about what they could do. So the committee is pushing in initiatives in the Abbey. Like, the idea was to get rid of all plastic disposable cups. And like we were talking before, these are all things that have impacts because they impact on the efficiency of, say, a rehearsal room. In the Abbeys, we've got staff and support, sometimes not always as much, but on the outside, we've got maybe one stage manager running a rehearsal room. The quickest and easiest thing for them to do, and particularly in the COVID situation, is to use plastic cups and throw them in a bin. That's the easiest thing for them. Otherwise, they're going to be there after rehearsal washing up cups. So it always comes down to that, and comes down to the lack of resource, kind of, in a way. It always comes back to, as Áine says, the answer to everything is give us more money. But yeah, sorry. So the Green Committee in the Abbey has proposed a lot of proposals on the deck at the moment about changing light bulbs in the building, like to that level of changing things to higher efficiency bulbs, and to turning off heating, and all those things if it's not being used, and not to just have all the lights on all the time. All of those sorts of initiatives. There was an initiative around the bar and reducing waste in the bar, and I'm not sure where this is at, but they had this idea of this machines that are bottle crushers now that you can get that crush it down to sand and bring it back to its original sand component, basically, ground glass. And it can be used, then it goes right down into a can. So, those massive, massive bottle things that you see being hiked up onto trucks to goes out to the dump, those can all come down to like a small bucket now of sand, essentially. And that can be given to garden centres will use it to aerate soil. And there's a whole lot of other practical uses for it. So that sort of initiative is going on in the building. And then for my part, I put a proposal on paper, which is something kind of been doing for years informally, where you make a connection or a relationship with, say, in my case, BG Salvage, which was the salvage yard that used to exist down on South Circular Road. They now in Naas. But that we would basically buy things from him and sell them back to him afterwards if we weren't going to use them again. Like, you have to make on the spot decisions about things. Is this very specific to this show? Will we ever use it again? Or do you want to buy it back? And so if we could do that, we do that with BG Salvage and Joe Byrne. But also then, as we kind of went on and the relationship developed, and also he became there was several films and TV series being shot in Dublin at the time, and so they were all going to him. And once film prop people find a place, it becomes very circular, because they will go, you know what, I'm finishing this film, I have all this stuff that we bought from all over the place, do you want it? And then he gets it at the end, because no one has anywhere to store it. And that way, genuinely, other people do get to use it. But he's profiting because they're paying for it or they're hiring it from him. He ended up hiring things for a finish. But Joe, every so often, I will ring him for doing a clear out of our stores, and there are things that are very, very specific to shows and things that we can't use. He will take them away in a 40-foot, and he will use them, and other people will use them. So it's kind of an idea that we have to firm up how that works in an actual practical way. But it means that things aren't going into skips. Things going into skips is just such a horrible, horrible feeling. And it's unavoidable lots of times, but yeah.
Yeah, it really is the kind of most heartbreaking of it all, to watch like a set assemble and then be lost forever. Yeah. And how would you go about, is there a way to go about firming up, as you said, that use of...
I don't know really. It's always been a little bit, it's an informal relationship that we've had for a long time. Yeah. And the other thing is, he will say to me, so if we have, say I get a model maker in to make something very specific for a show, Joe says, anything quirky? Have you anything quirky? Because he has people, TV and film people coming in all the time, and he knows that someone will. He likes to put them on display. So he's gone this whole route of display. I don't know if any of you know BG Salvage. When he was in South Circular Road, you'd literally go in there, and what was this enormous warehouse. He had these amazing guys that worked for him, because the amount of film people coming. It was basically like, it was an event. You could go there and spend a day there. He had rooms set up. So he had like the Georgian living room. He'd have like the Victorian bar and everything that was in there. The walls, doors, everything. They literally went they just got really into the display part of it and bringing people in. Honestly, it was like, it could have been a tourist attraction if they had marketed it that way. People would have gone in and seen a living kind of museum of things.
That sounds incredible, a museum of props and sets.
Oh yeah, it was a day trip. You could go there quite cheerfully and wander around and see rooms set up in different time periods and things. So, and then the odd mad thing like the science fiction films or something, they would bring him back, just like crazy things, and he'd have a special section on there. He just got really into that stuff. So yeah, there's, and he has the same setup down in Naas now, and to promote him. The problem is then it is a day trip to go see him. Then if you're coming from Dublin is the thing, but everything is being decentralized. I have to just wave the flag for County Kildare, as I also live there now. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of reason to get in your car if you're film or TV and come to Kildare. because there's BG, there's another prop place that I haven't quite figured out exactly where it is. It's somewhere on the other side of Nace, I believe. Someone set it up recently enough. There is also the Story Yard in Portlaoise.
Oh yeah.
He's another one that has done a phenomenal job down there, where he has set it up room by room, so you can walk around and you can walk through the setup of, you know, a Victorian kitchen or whatever, and it's all laid out that way.
That's amazing.
And they have an amazing cafe.
Oh, brilliant. So you really can spend the day there.
Yes, you can. It's a day trip. Yeah.
We'll get the links to all these places as well and have them up just so people can see them if they are kind of sourcing them. But Jeda, that's kind of a kind of beautiful segue into you. And I guess firstly looking at film and TV and making that more sustainable. You were talking about looking at sets and locations.
Yeah, totally. And let me just echo what was said before, is that I definitely have, my whole flat is just full of props and sets from previous things that I've tried to save. So it's mostly all of the things that I've cultivated and accumulated over the years that I've saved from skips. But there is definitely I've experienced trying to find a working door 3 times for the same play, because we brought it back again and again, and getting 3 different doors, you know. So it's definitely one of those things that certain props and things will come up again and again, and being able to access that certainly would be lovely. But I understand the lack of space is huge. I think there's so many different kinds of ways that I think theatre and film are very different in the need for sustainability. Certainly my experience on film is a lot of the time when especially if you're filming on location, everybody is driving up there. And a lot of the time you're using generators, which are huge diesel guzzling things that are very, very loud and emitting several different things into the atmosphere that you don't necessarily want. I would say the first thing that kind of came to mind when I started thinking about sustainable filming is having either something that would incentivize carpooling, or indeed getting a bus like an electric bus to bring people to the set or to the location. You know, I know a lot of film people do drive, but that might kind of it'll also save on space when you arrive there. A lot of the time, you know, if you've been on location, there's about 20 or 30 cars around the place trying to find a parking on the Sally Gap up in Wicklow, you know. And then in the likes of electric generators as well, you know, they're not as, I think nowadays they're getting stronger and stronger kind of with batteries and stuff. And if we can power cars with batteries, you know, I would expect, I'm not an expert, but I would expect an electric generator would also be quieter on a set. They're so loud, you know, so it's kind of, those would be the things that would come to mind. I know that there are sustainability managers for film sets now that they can kind of come in and consult with you prior to shooting and kind of talk about how you can make your set a little bit greener. The likes of encouraging, and this goes for theatre rehearsal rooms as well, and like having water facilities just for people, that like taps and things, so people don't need to be bringing in or buying plastic bottles all the time if they have their own bottles and they can, you know, fill them up themselves. That's a very small thing, but those things add up as well, especially if you're kind of in a rehearsal room every single day. Encouraging people, or at least having the facilities to encourage people, you know, to use reusable things is great. I mean, I've definitely been on film sets where they're going towards that, where they have lots of plastic bottles and you put your name on it, but I think there's one more step we can go further.
So you own the plastic forever.
Yes. Yeah.
It is interesting what you say. Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry, we have those. They gave us. I don't have mine here with me, but yeah, we all got one in the Abbey. Like, yeah. Through the COVID thing, we all got our own with our names on.
Yeah.
COVID is another hindrance in regards to particularly rehearsal rooms and as you say, like stage managers. Single use has been brought back in more so because of
we had gone so far with it, and then it was just, this has to happen, and things like, for convenience, the sanitizing wipes that you just wipe and throw away, you know, all of those things, and trying not to use them. But then, especially I would say on film location, if you're out in the middle of nowhere, that's your easiest option, quickest option.
Totally.
Yeah.
And even in regards to masks, a lot of the time they're the single-use ones that are taken off before. I was on set before, and it's taken off after every take, and you dump them, and then you get a new one, and it's a huge amount of waste for. But it's interesting what you say, Jed. The travel is a big aspect, because ordinarily each one is collected individually, or they all drive, as you say.
Yeah, there's a lot of driving involved, and like sometimes it can't be helped, because sometimes you are, up a mountain. I've definitely seen more and more kind of like buses and things starting to come in. So I think, if it can work, like I think people should start thinking about that, or it should be in producers or production managers' minds, if we can get a bus up there, or how can we limit the number of cars, that would always be great.
Yeah. And I suppose it's something to talk about as well, to incentivize audiences to start. It is a way that we could go greener, to look at how audience get to shows and theatres. I mean, it's easier for the Abbey because we're in town, but even out here in the Axis, to encourage people to use buses or to cycle.
Totally.
Is a big one. Áine, I'll come to you again just about costume, because I know you were talking about sets, but in regards to costume, is there anything you would like to see happen to make it more cyclical or more sustainable?
Yeah, well, I was thinking about that, and sort of thinking about like how, again, if you're working on really low budget things, you do have to sort of buy and throw away, or if you're looking for very particular stuff and you're like buying from charity shops, they often don't like accept returns, or they will only give you an exchange or something. So I was thinking, like, if there was a way for us to have like a shared document online or something with images that we could kind of pass around to each other, because these things are really similar, and actually we're often working with similar or the same actors. And I think that it would be great to kind of share, because I suppose I can store a lot more costumes, and I know that other costume designers too have a ton of costumes that they just keep because they don't want to throw them away, and it's a bit easier than like storing like a door in the house. So I think if we had somewhere we could share stuff either for free or like a really low cost, because I mean the Abbey costume hire is great, but again, if you're on like a no budget show, even trying to rent can be really impossible, and it's cheaper to like go to pennies. But if we could find a way to share and make it sort of as like open and sent to like absolutely everyone as possible, sort of maybe sent even around like colleges and stuff for like college productions. I think that would be great, because again, I do end up, especially charity shop things, and like for say shows that require like a vintage look or something, you're always buying charity shop stuff, and they just don't want to take it back, which is fair. So I think that if we could find a way to like create some way of sharing costumes, that would be really, really great.
Yeah, it would be amazing. It's something I'd never even thought of, that like having almost a lookbook of all of the costumes that we have.
Yeah,
but like if there was like sections for different like cities in Ireland or whatever, so that you know that you could get something quickly from someone, and you just have like size and an image of whatever it is, it could be really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And bring back to the circular thing of getting a silk off the train from Galway.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think when you were talking, Eimer, I was thinking about that, and I was like, oh, I just don't know that many, like, or thinking about when I was starting and I just knew no one, and I wouldn't be like, if I saw a designer in the Abbey, I wouldn't have the guts to like email them and be like, hey, do you still have that? Like, so there was some way that you could kind of share that information, that new people getting into the industry as well would sort of have a way to access it, that isn't as like daunting. That would be really good.
I guess I was the luckiest ASM in Ireland when I started in theatre, because I actually started in film, and then I kind of fell into theatre. But the very first show I ever worked on, I was brought in by the hand and introduced to Stephen Malloy in the Abbey prop store.
Nice.
Cool.
because it was someone on the
Rare. A rare
someone
thing.
on the writer actually used to play football with him and knew him from outside the Abbey, and it was like a tiny fringe show that was literally luckiest day as I'm in Ireland. Yeah, so it's about that. It is about that, breaking down that daunting thing.
It's like sharing information in a way that's like more open, I suppose, because a lot of the things are like about sort of like who you know, or like who you kind of have an informal relationship with, and then that leads to like younger or like newer designers kind of feeling like the only choice is to like go to Pennies and buy loads of stuff because they don't know where else you would even look. So, or like even sort of sharing, like, there's a few places and a few people I know that will make stuff for me, and like there's a few shops I know that will return things, and if we could have like something to share that kind of information, or share like sustainable like makers in Ireland, so that you could sort of have a list or somewhere to reference when you're looking, it would be really good.
There are a couple of Facebook groups. There are a few Facebook groups now. They're coming more and more. There's one, of course I should have looked this up beforehand, but there is one called Free Cycle Ireland, I think.
Yes.
There's one called Film, and it literally says Film and Set or something on the Facebook. Sorry, I wouldn't look at it.
There's a good few props ones.
There's a
good few props groups and stuff. They're really, really good.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that many costume ones, but there's also like, I think it's called New, like NU, of like a place that you can kind of rent clothes and return them. That's quite cheap. I'll try and find that.
We can have a look for all these links as well, because there's no waste, and there's upcycle as well, where you can find these places. We've just got a question in from Maeve. So Native Events has been doing great work in making green energy available for festivals. So that is amazing. But there's a question in, so at what point in the process do you think a designer needs to start thinking about the green approach? I guess that's kind of to everyone.
Straight away. Well, because it's tied into the budget and the kind of ethos of like the team, the more people you can get on board with the fact that you're trying to do like a more sustainable or green design, the better. So like if the director knows that they can't sort of say to you a day before the show that they need a very elaborate thing that you're just going to have to buy and throw away, and that's just part of the show, that's part of how it's going to work, then like that will sort of add to or like will add to kind of stopping sort of this kind of like throwaway like cycle.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think if the plan is in there from the very start and everybody is aware of the fact that we're working towards a green production, you know, that'll alleviate all of those last minute things that cause waste.
And like always, you know, obviously things happen, but like if we're all kind of generally aware, it would definitely help, so that it's not kind of on one or two people to be doing it, but that it's like part of the whole production.
Yeah.
It's kind of on everyone. Eimer, would you agree? Would you say kind of from the very, very get-go of kind of a production's birth is when we need to start thinking about its greenery?
Well, in theory, but the idea of it being just another thing it's hard enough to make theatre, lads. That's the problem. It's hard enough. Yeah. And then to have all of the other things that you have to think about first. So, I mean, it's not an easy thing to be the person that puts up the hand and goes, well, how green is this going to be? It really isn't, because it feels like another problem, you know. So, but it is happening more often. I think people are actually willing to say it now. How green is this?
And what do you think the first steps are to make a show more green? Is it to just start that conversation so everyone's kind of aware?
I mean, it happens, I'm sure, to everybody. You go around, you go, God, this is so wasteful. God, this is so wasteful. It's just, I mean, maybe just noticing that it's wasteful and acknowledging that it's wasteful is the first step. And I think we're all there, more or less, aren't we? And even if we're not, we're getting more vocal about it. So, I think we may be in what's the next step. And there's lots of, like I was saying to you, ideas and kind of pie in the sky notions, but what works, I'm not 100% sure, because I don't think we're there yet. I don't know of anyone that has found something that works.
Yeah.
I know of.
I feel like, oh, sorry, go on.
No, that's it.
I feel like we've kind of shown, like, in the past year or more, that like artists and like theatre makers, people who work in film and TV, we actually do have a bit of power, like when we work together. And I think it is about sort of pushing the Arts Council, pushing the government to say we need support to do this. Like, no amount of us continually going, we want to be better, but we can't, because what's stopping us is like the lack of support from the government and the Arts Council in this way. If we come together and kind of push, I think that we can see results in support for this, like sort of practical action rather than just talk, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. And would you see that, like, for example, in Arts Council applications, having a separate section for how green can I make this?
Yeah.
Totally.
And having
space.
Budget.
If there's money in it, you know, if you get a little, if there's a little pot of money there that is available for, if you can prove your green credentials on a show, then that's certainly an incentive.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's mercenary, but
it's really interesting what you're saying, Jeda, that you can get someone to come and to talk to you about how green the film is.
Totally. You know, I think like just people who are experts in that area, who can go, well, actually, if you're printing out scripts, do it in this way, or, you know, like, because you can't not print out scripts. There, you know, you can't, people go having iPads going around, like there are certain things you can't avoid. So it's like, well, maybe you're providing a whole lot of recycled paper to print out the scripts, or whatever it is. You know, I think having somebody come in and consult, rather than having everybody have to pivot and become an expert within the production, having somebody coming in and going, well, I actually know how to, you know, give you hints on how to make this more sustainable, and providing a budget for a person to come in like that could be something very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Because it is quite daunting, even stepping up to have the conversation. You realize how much we need to think about it, how much there is, and I guess just not having the answers to it. So it's nice to have somebody come in and kind of hint at small things that can ultimately make a big difference.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. And Jeda, would you notice, like, what are the main differences in making a theatre piece more green as opposed to making a filmed production?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I suppose what I've noticed kind of within theatre, so there's a lot more rehearsal time within theatre. The kind of things that the main things that I can think of during a rehearsal time is obviously kind of script printing and stuff, but then you've got kind of tea and water facilities, you know, but also just literally a recycling bin. If people are bringing in and buying things, a lot of the time I've seen a lot of waste within rehearsal rooms, because it's just kind of a normal waste bin and there's no means of recycling things. So that's a very small thing that could be provided within all rehearsal rooms, is a place to facilitate recycling, so that, you know, people aren't throwing things away immediately. And then I think kind of once you get into production within theatre, you're talking about the costumes and the props and things, which we've already covered. I don't know. I'd love to talk to a lighting designer about gels and reusing gels. I don't know how many times gels can be reused. I don't think they can be. Yeah. So I don't know whether there's something in that. And then within film, a lot of the time it's the electricity, it's the driving, it's the generators that are kind of providing a lot of waste there. The last film that I made, we found a lot of props on the location. So it's kind of like location managers that can find a location that has the props or the furniture or the set kind of already there. That's a good incentive, rather than like going to a place and then having to populate it with a lot of things. Was, you know, it's a handy thing to kind of even just have in a location manager's head, is going to a place that already has things set up like that, you know?
Yeah.
See everyone, and New is in the background going,
yeah.
We can get a green stamp. We already do that.
They find. And how many times can a gel be used? Do Do we know the answer to
I don't
that?
know. I know they burn out. I do know that.
A few.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I've
want to
seen,
say one or two, and I'm sorry if anyone is listening and going like, no.
Yeah, I wonder. Like,
I've seen,
I do know people. I mean, I've done it like myself. We used
Yeah.
to take them out of lamps on the tour, like, and put them into folders
Yeah.
and dry, but they
Yeah.
get more crumpled and then they won't fit in the thing, and
that's
Yeah, and
they
it
do
depends how
burn.
long a show is and how long. Yeah, what the it depends.
Yeah, like I'd love to know whether there's a way of, like, maybe there's like, is there a way of doing glass ones or perspex ones, and do they affect the lights? And I don't know, I'm starting a conversation I can't finish.
Yeah.
but I think the whole thing about this is
Yeah.
just starting the conversation, because none of us can fix or finish it,
Yeah.
particularly with this. But I guess it's a nice way if you could see one change happen, and I don't know if this is similar to asking you your favorite artist or your favorite album, but if you could like see one change happen practically over a rehearsal room or designing a show, or let's say in the building of the Abbey, what would it be? If that's not oversimplifying, and also if it's as simple as putting a recycling bin in the rooms or putting water facilities there.
Well, we have recycling bins. I would say bubble wrap.
Yeah,
Bubble wrap on get outs and get ins, using bubble wrap to wrap props.
Yes.
And I'm always taking it out and putting it back into bags and going to use that again, and it gets dirty and everything. Just don't use it. We'll have to find something else. Develop a soft, a shock absorbing cardboard, something that we can use that's quick and as easy as bubble wrap, please. Thank you, somebody in tech. Because that's the thing, and that's what happens, and everyone just buys these enormous big rolls of it and takes big scalps off, and things get wrapped and then they go into storage because of transport, and again because of transport and things going onto trucks, and because space being at a premium and things having to be packed, so that furniture that will rub off of one another has to be padded.
Yeah.
Back in the day it was blankets, and every mover had blankets, but then that sort of thing, and who washes the blankets? There's knock-on effects of every, but yeah, at the moment, or certainly the last while, the thing is that you use pallet wrap for everything, tons and tons and tons. So you put up whatever your protection is on something, and then pallet wrap and pallet wrap and pallet wrap, and then at the other side, cut, scrumpled up, bin.
Yeah.
So those are the things. Storage as well, because we do it here. Tend to use clear plastic boxes when we're storing props and things, because we've got to maximize our storage. So you need to be able to pile things up on things. So you use clear plastic boxes that you can see through. They only have a certain life as well. They will eventually crack and they become useless, and you have to bin them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, back for though, it probably would have been wooden boxes and different systems. There's knock-on effects of lack of space and needing to maximize space and piling things to ceilings and those sorts of things. I don't have an answer. Just throwing out more problems. But yeah, I bubble wrap is one of my big things.
It's a big one, because we have gallery a space here, and often we show them, but when people buy the pieces, certain cardboard can leave residue on the pieces, so we can't use that. But it's looking for an alternative to safely send the piece while also not using reams and reams of bubble wrap
or styrofoam peanuts, those things.
Now there are ones that dissolve, aren't there?
There are now, based in corn, something starchy ones I've seen. Bubble wrap. And Jeda, for you, do you have kind of one small, is it recycling bins, is it water in the space?
Yeah, so I suppose it's kind of two things that I would love to see started within kind of rehearsal rooms and stuff would be, actually I think it comes down to the production company as well, or whoever's producing it, just for if there is kind of a manifesto on bullying and supporting people within the rehearsal room, there should be a manifesto on sustainability, and I think that should just be on the tip of everybody's tongue, and that should come from the top down, rather than putting the weight on the designers, outright. It should be coming, from the top, from the producers or whoever is putting on the show, to kind of go, well, we want to do this, how can we do this, and for that conversation to be at the forefront of every production. And as well, just a small practical thing is, at the end of a production, to contact everybody about their scripts and to take everybody's scripts and recycle them if they're not going to use them. Because I have so many scripts in all of my drawers, and people a lot of the time don't keep them. So for an email to go around at the end of a production to go, give us all your scripts, that would be great.
Great idea, Jeda.
It's a really great idea, because I have so many scripts that are just on my bookshelf that are comprising, I don't know, all the memories of the shows that I've done. It's a really great idea to just get the scripts back.
Mm-hmm.
And Áine, what about you? Do you have something you'd like to see?
I mean,
I know many things, but
so many things. But I think, like Jeda was saying, I think that one of the sort of smaller things that we could all do that would make an impact is to have that conversation at the very start.
Yeah. To
have it at the start of every show. And look, if you're in the first production meeting and no one is saying it, to just do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's hard, and it's really hard to be that one that's like, hey, what about the, but I think that even on smaller productions, it's really important to say, look, do we need 4 like flats that we're going to throw away? Is that like, to think about that when you're like working with the team on a design, to think about like, what is the most sort of like sustainable way that you could do this? How can you do this in the way that will like create the least waste? And to just have like an open chat about it at the start.
That sounds brilliant. Well, that actually brings us to a lovely wrap up. But thank you guys for joining us, and we will make sure that anything that we mentioned today will be put up. We have links, particularly for zero waste items. But thank you so much for joining us. As I said, this is the second of our 4 chats that we will have in the context of COP26. So you can find all the details for our next chats on all of our social medias and on our website. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so much.